Feels like every day there's some new AI breakthrough, you know?
Right.
But I gotta say, this latest stuff from Baidu, it really feels like a big deal.
Yeah. No, you're right.
ERNIE 4.5,
Mm-hmm.
brand new model, ERNIE X1,
Right.
and then they're like, oh, and by the way, a huge upgrade to their ERNIE Bot. It's a lot to keep up with. So that's what we're doing this deep dive today on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even for folks who are really plugged into the AI world, like it can feel overwhelming. So what we want to do in this deep dive is really cut through the noise, cut through all the technical jargon, and really get to, like, what does this all actually mean, for the future of AI, but also, like, how are these things going to be used in the real world? How is this going to affect industries? How's it going to affect your life? That kind of thing.
Exactly, exactly. So consider this your shortcut to understanding what's really going on.
Right.
We've gone through a bunch of different sources like latest Align Y and Cryptopolitan, even some early academic discussions and podcast outlines about all these updates from Baidu.
Yeah.
Yeah, great sources.
So let's jump into it. ERNIE 4.5, that's the first thing we're looking at, right? What's so special about this model?
Well, it's their next generation, what's called the multimodal model. Now, multimodal just means that it can understand and process information in lots of different forms. So, text, images, audio, all that stuff.
Okay.
But there are a few specific improvements that are, really worth highlighting.
All right. So let's talk about those improvements then. First one that jumped out at me was enhanced multilingual capabilities.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean in practice?
What's really interesting here is it's not just about like adding more languages.
Yeah.
It's about it really suggests a deeper level of understanding of like the nuances of different languages, and in particular, they're highlighting Chinese and other Asian languages.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going beyond just simple translation.
Yeah.
They're really trying to capture like cultural nuances. So that when the AI is generating responses, it feels natural in those contexts. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. And it suggests that they've invested a lot in like training these models on huge amounts of data in all these different languages, which, could give them a real edge in markets where English isn't the dominant language.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal, right? Especially for Baidu. I mean, they're already so strong in China, but now they can really start, branching out even more.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not just like a tacked on feature. This is really baked into the architecture of ERNIE 4.5.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, the next thing that I saw was improved contextual understanding.
Right.
What does that look like?
So imagine like older AI models. They might be able to understand individual sentences like in isolation.
Right.
But ERNIE 4.5 is they're aiming for like a much deeper understanding of like the whole conversation or the whole document.
Okay.
So it can generate responses that aren't just grammatically correct, but they're also like coherent, they're relevant, they're, logically connected to what was said before.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Less of those responses that are like technically right, but completely miss the point.
Exactly, yeah. Which is something we've all experienced, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So hopefully this means we'll see fewer of those.
Hopefully, yeah.
Okay, the next thing I wanted to touch on is advanced training techniques. What are some of the like cutting edge methods they're using to train these models?
Yeah, so a couple of things they highlighted. One is self-supervised learning, which is basically where the model learns from like tons and tons of data, but it's not labeled data.
Right.
So it's kind of like learning by learning to fill in the blanks. You give it a bunch of text and you blank out certain words and it has to figure out what those words are. And that way they can leverage, massive amounts of data without needing like humans to go in and label everything.
Right.
The other thing is transfer learning, which is where, the model learns from one task and then that knowledge is applied to a new but kind of related task.
So it's like if you know how to play the piano, it's easier to learn the keyboard.
Exactly, yeah. And that makes the whole process a lot more efficient. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not starting from scratch every time.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, the last point about ERNIE 4.5 is increased efficiency, which, in AI, that's always a big deal, right?
Absolutely. I mean, efficiency just means like faster processing times, lower costs, and That's huge, when you're talking about like deploying these models in the real world. And the way they've achieved that is through a bunch of optimizations in the model's architecture, like the way it's designed. So not only is it more powerful, but it's also more practical to use.
Okay.
And they even gave us some pricing details, which is interesting. It starts at 55 cents per million input tokens and then 2.2 million output tokens.
Okay.
And that's through their Key and Fan platform. And then they also said that it's accessible to all ERNIE Bot users.
So not just for businesses, right?
Right, yeah. So this tech is becoming more readily available.
Okay, so ERNIE 4.5 definitely sounds like a big step forward for more capable and more efficient, like general purpose AI.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Let's move on to ERNIE X1.
Mm-hmm.
This one seems to be more focused on like specific industries, right?
Yeah, that's the key difference. ERNIE X1 is it's built with a real emphasis on reasoning, so it's specifically designed for like very particular applications in different sectors.
Okay.
And what's really attention grabbing is they claim that it matches the performance of DeepSeek's R1 model, but at half the cost.
Half the cost.
Yeah.
Okay, if that's true, that's a big deal.
That's a huge deal, especially if you're a company, looking to implement this technology.
Absolutely.
And yeah, the pricing details are pretty impressive. It starts at 28 cents per million input tokens and then 1.10 per million output tokens.
Okay, that's significantly cheaper.
Yeah. And that's that'll be available through their Key and Fan platform soon.
For enterprise users and developers, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, not available to everybody yet, but it sounds like it's coming soon.
So where exactly are they targeting ERNIE X1? The outline mentions healthcare as a primary area.
Yeah, healthcare is a big one. I mean, imagine using AI to provide diagnostic support. So,
yeah.
Analyzing all that complex patient data and helping doctors make better decisions.
Right, right.
Another thing is like managing medical records. I mean, that's a huge cumbersome process, right?
Oh, yeah.
So AI could help streamline all that, like automate the documentation, make sure everything's standardized, and that frees up healthcare professionals to spend more time with patients.
Yeah, that sounds like it could really improve both efficiency and quality of care.
Yeah, potentially.
Okay, so healthcare. What about finance? How's ERNIE X1 being applied in that sector?
So in finance, being able to reason through complex data is super important. So ERNIE X1 could be used for like more sophisticated risk assessment, helping financial institutions evaluate creditworthiness, predict market trends.
And also fraud detection, being able to spot those like subtle anomalies, suspicious patterns in transactions.
Yeah, that's so important these days.
Yeah, for sure. And it can provide better security for both businesses and consumers.
Okay, so healthcare, finance. The next thing I saw was urban planning. Now, that's a really interesting one. Like, how does AI fit into designing our cities?
Yeah, so this is where the spatial reasoning capabilities come in. So ERNIE X1 can be used to, like, optimize the layout of urban areas, analyze traffic patterns, try to reduce congestion, even improve like essential services like public transportation, waste management, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So the idea is like using AI to create smarter, more sustainable, more livable cities.
Yeah, that's an application I hadn't really thought about before.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And then lastly, it looks like they're also looking at using ERNIE X1 to improve customer service interactions.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, customer service can be a real pain point for a lot of companies, right?
So ERNIE X1 could be used to like really enhance those interactions, provide more intelligent, more personalized responses, because it can better understand like complex inquiries and, and give better solutions. And that can lead to like happier customers. And it could even reduce the workload on human agents.
Yeah, everybody wins.
Yeah, exactly.
So ERNIE X1, it's all about taking that like core AI power and directing it at very specific problems.
Yeah, very targeted.
And they also mentioned like customizable solutions, strong data security features, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's key. I mean, being able to tailor ERNIE X1 to the specific needs of different industries is huge. And then, in sensitive areas like healthcare and finance, you absolutely need robust data security. So Baidu is really emphasizing that, which I think is smart.
Makes sense.
And then they also said they're planning to integrate it more broadly across their ecosystem. So even individual users might have access to these specialized AI capabilities eventually.
Okay, so we've covered ERNIE 4.5, ERNIE X1. Now let's talk about the updated ERNIE Bot. This was already available, but they're giving it a pretty big upgrade.
Yeah.
And the big news It's free now for individual users.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
That's huge.
It's a smart move on their part, It could really open up their user base.
Absolutely.
And the updates themselves are all about making it a better, more engaging, more useful conversational AI.
Okay, so the first thing they highlight is improved interactivity.
Mm-hmm.
What's that going to look like for users?
Basically, you can expect to have more natural, more seamless conversations.
Oh.
So it's going to be better at, handling those shifts in topic, remembering things you said earlier in the conversation, even handling interruptions better.
Yeah, that's always a bit of a stumbling block for these conversational AIs.
Exactly, yeah. And then also, better understanding of user intent. So, even if you don't phrase things perfectly, it should be able to figure out what you're trying to do.
Right. Less of that feeling like you have to speak like a robot to get the AI to understand you.
Exactly, yeah. It should feel a lot more user-friendly.
Okay, so improved interactivity. What about advanced natural language generation?
So this just means that ERNIE Bot is getting even better at generating high-quality written content. So whether it's, drafting emails, summarizing documents, even helping with creative writing,
Okay.
the idea is that the text it produces is going to be more fluent, more coherent, more contextually appropriate.
Sounds good.
And this is particularly useful for things like customer service, where you really need clear, effective communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's also great for individuals, who might be using it for content creation or other writing tasks.
Yeah, I could see that being a huge productivity boost.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and then the last thing about ERNIE Bot is integration with Baidu services. How's that being enhanced?
So they're really tightening that integration with their existing tools, like their search engine, their maps.
Okay.
So, for example, if you ask ERNIE Bot a question that needs, up-to-date information, it can now seamlessly access Baidu search and get that information for you.
Okay.
Or if you're planning a trip, it can integrate with Baidu Maps, help you find directions, information about your destination.
Right.
So it really becomes a much more versatile, much more powerful personal assistant.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like we talked about with ERNIE 4.5 and X1, they're both accessible through the ERNIE Bot platform now.
Yeah.
And they're planning to integrate them even more broadly across their services.
So it's like a whole AI ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. They're building out this whole ecosystem.
Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit now and talk about the broader context, the competitive landscape in AI. China as a whole has been making some pretty big moves in this field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Baidu was one of the first to launch a ChatGPT-like chatbot in China, back in 2023.
Right.
And since then, we've seen a ton of activity, both from Chinese companies and from U.S. companies, all developing their own sophisticated large language models.
Yeah. And the outline specifically mentions the disruption caused by the Chinese startup DeepSeek.
Right.
And their open source LLM model. What was it about them that really shook things up?
Well, a couple of things. First, they really focused on reasoning capabilities, which was, not necessarily a given at the time.
Okay.
And second, their costs were significantly lower than OpenAI's ChatGPT.
Okay, so they were cheaper and smarter.
Basically, yeah. And the fact that their model was open source was also huge. It's meant that a lot more developers and researchers could access it, customize it, collaborate on it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So they really kind of, they changed the game a bit.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see a new player come in and challenge the established giants. And it seems like Baidu has actually responded to this in a pretty interesting way. They're actually offering support for DeepSeek.
Yeah, that was a big surprise. They announced that they were going to support the DeepSeek model by running it on their own computing chips, which are, really advanced.
Okay.
So it shows that they're willing to collaborate, to leverage different strengths within the AI ecosystem.
Yeah, instead of just trying to compete head-to-head, they're saying, hey, maybe we can work together.
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen similar announcements from other big Chinese tech companies like Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance.
Okay.
They're all offering support for DeepSeek on their cloud platforms. And even companies outside of tech like Lenovo, the hardware company, Geely, the car company, they've adopted DeepSeek.
So it's not just a tech thing, it's spreading to other industries.
Yeah, it really seems to be gaining traction across the board.
The outline also mentions some interesting comments from Baidu CEO Robin Lai about potentially huge reductions in interference costs.
Yeah, he was speaking at the World Government Summit in Dubai, and he made some pretty bold predictions.
Okay.
He said that the costs associated with foundational AI models, like the interference costs, could be reduced by more than 90% in the next year.
Wow, that's a massive drop.
Yeah, it is. And his point was that as those costs come down, we're going to see a corresponding increase in productivity across all sorts of industries.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if it's cheaper, more people can use it, and that should lead to more innovation, more efficiency.
Exactly. It could really democratize access to AI for a lot of businesses and individuals.
Okay, so we've got the perspective from China. What about from the U.S.? It sounds like Sam Altman from OpenAI also had some thoughts on DeepSeek.
Yeah, he did. He actually acknowledged that they were doing nice work in creating a competitive chatbot.
Okay.
And he also said that, he expects to see some regional variations in AI products, because of geopolitical factors and things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's interesting, right? There's this competition, but there's also this understanding that AI development is a global thing.
Absolutely. Okay, so bringing it all together, what are the key takeaways from all these Baidu announcements?
Well, I think the big picture is that Baidu is really pushing the boundaries of AI in a lot of different ways. ERNIE 4.5 is a big leap forward for their core multimodal model with all the enhancements we talked about. Multilingual capabilities, contextual understanding, training techniques, efficiency.
Hmm.
Then you have ERNIE X1, which is, specifically designed to tackle those industry-specific problems, and they're really emphasizing the cost competitiveness there.
Right.
And then the upgraded ERNIE Bot, which is now free for everyone, that just makes AI more accessible to everybody.
Yeah, it sounds like they're really covering all their bases.
They are, yeah. And I think, all of these advancements have the potential to really change the game in a lot of different sectors.
Mm. Absolutely. I mean, we talked about healthcare, finance, urban planning, customer service. I mean, the potential applications are endless.
They really are. And what's exciting is that it's not just theoretical anymore. We're seeing AI being applied to real-world problems, solving real challenges.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought for you listening. With all this rapid development happening in China, Baidu's ERNIE updates, the emergence of DeepSeek, how is this competition going to reshape the global AI landscape? And how is it going to change the way we interact with technology in the near future? It's a question worth thinking about.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on.
For sure.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens next.